Hey everyone, today we are live on the SEO Leadership webinar. Today we are missing one of our favorite guest hosts as well. Darius, he is off today, but today we have on such an amazing, incredible guest that we are bringing on, Travis Tallent. He is the managing director at Brainlabs, the managing director for SEO and CRO. He actually was previously the VP of SEO at Brainlabs. So congratulations, Travis, on
Thank
scoring
you.
that. How's it been going over at Brainlabs? Have you been enjoying the new promotion?
Yeah, absolutely. It has been absolutely wonderful to blend the SEO and CRO teams together. My
Mm,
team's now 80 people, which is just like
it's
mind
insane, yeah.
blowing to think about. But I get to work with incredible minds. I get to work with incredible clients, and I feel honored and privileged every day that I am
Mm.
here.
Awesome, awesome. That's actually part of what we're going to dive into today. So, for everyone listening and anyone that's interested in team leadership, listen in because it's not going to get any better than this right now. And yeah, just a brief background on Travis. He was previously director of organic media at Booyah Advertising, as well as leading a team of 7 over there. And he was also associate director and SEO team lead at W Promote. So, we are so excited to be chatting to Travis about everything team leadership, AI, and what's going on in the SEO industry. So, Travis, what we usually like to do is to just ask our guests to tell us a little bit about your career journey and how you got over. How you got your role over at Brain Labs as well. So yeah, if you could kick
Yeah.
things off with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started in the marketing industry by creating a scholarship search engine. And it was meant to make applying and finding scholarships much easier than
Wow.
what it was. And that taught me how to build a search engine. That taught me how to market a new company, new product. As most startups go, it fizzled out after my colleagues and I went our separate ways after college. That's when I
Mm,
started at W Promote, learned all things digital marketing, paid search, paid media, SEO. And after about a year there, I pitched the idea that we should actually specialize, so then we can really dig deeper into each of these channels. And that's when the SEO team, as part of the small business team there, was born. I ended up leading that team, leading trainings, going through contracting, mentoring folks on SEO, and very much became known as like the SEO guy over there.
mm,
Um, and from there, I was headhunted by Booyah Advertising to launch their SEO department. They were historically a paid media agency. They had about 100 people, and they wanted to start an SEO product. And I spent about 2.5 years there doing that. And from there, Brainlabs headhunted me, saying we need a really great, ambitious leader to take us into the next wave of SEO growth. And I've now been at Brainlabs 3.5 years, and we've grown 400% in that time. And we work with some of the world's biggest brands: Capital One, Microsoft, Lego, Adidas. And it is an absolute privilege to be here.
amazing. Yeah, that's a power punch of a introduction and a career journey so far. So thank you so much for that. I think one of the things that really stood out for me when I was checking out your career journey as well was that you had spent about on average about 2 to 3 years per company that you were with. And something that we've been chatting to our guests a lot about recently is how to ensure employee tenure, especially at an agency level.
Mm.
And with a company like Brain Labs, naturally, you guys are just, smashing it in all aspects, from the clients to the projects that you guys are taking on and everything. So, outside of that, how do you ensure managing that, employee tenure and employee retention is something that's kind of at the forefront for you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. It is not an easy one, to be honest. And I think it's very much a two-way street. What I mean by that is, as an employee, it's really important to state, where do you want to be, and ask for resources to ultimately be able to achieve that. And on the flip side, it's up to the company to listen as to what that person's ambitions are, and then make sure that you're stitching them up with the resources to get them where they are. And I will be honest, sometimes there's misalignment there, right? Like sometimes a company can't grow fast enough to provide the resources or what that person is ultimately wanting to achieve. But as an employee, if you're bringing that up in conversation, then you understand that a lot more, and it's a lot easier for you to be able to self-select out or know how that's ultimately going to work out for you. I'm a big proponent as a leader that I want to create a feedback culture and open communication enough to where no matter if that person stays at Brainlabs or goes somewhere else, they grew in their time working with me. And I want my leaders to do the same for me.
Awesome. And are there any particular trends that you've been noticing with employees, and what's been sort of gathering that or keeping them sort of interested in the team and staying within the agency over the past year or so?
Yeah, one thing that I've heard overwhelmingly from our team over the last year is they want clear growth plans, and they want to understand what did they need to deliver in order to reach that next stage of their career. And we've been challenged with that. I have an incredible head of SEO, Jessica Finch. She actually built out our entire growth plan process for our team, and clarity is what I think employees want most now, is really clearly understanding, what do I need to achieve in order to get to that next level, or the level beyond that, or the level beyond that. And then once I'm at that level, what does that job look like? What are the role requirements? What does the day-to-day look like? So we're working really diligently to create clarity for our team. And my hope is that by providing that clarity and having those open and honest conversations, that provides motivation for the team. And or someone realizes, I actually don't want to do that job, and I would rather go on the client services route or check out a different practice, right? And I think that's the beauty of any career. You get to choose every day what you want to do, and you should be going down a path that excites you and ultimately motivates you.
Awesome. I love that. On the topic of onboarding, snuck a little quote in from your LinkedIn bio that mentioned that you had built an SEO onboarding program from scratch for new hires and improved account onboarding time by around 50% on average. So I'd love to ask you, what do you think constitutes of a good, strong onboarding process? And do you have any advice to team leads that are in that situation now, where they may be trying to improve their onboarding processes at the moment?
Yeah. This is going to sound really elementary, but putting pen to paper on like what an onboarding process is and what you want that person to be able to achieve in week 1, week 2, what their goals are in the first 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. It's amazing what taking the time, 2 or 3 hours to really think through what that person's onboarding program is, the impact that has on someone's career, on someone's experience entering an agency, is tremendous. I'm sure there are people listening in who have been thrown to the wolves as they enter a new job of like, oh, you're smart, you'll figure it out. And while that is true, like most of us are smart, most of us will figure it out, it is stressful and it's unclear. So the onboarding program that we've developed and then iterated on again and again, really provides clarity in terms of what does your first 90 days look like? What are the goals beyond that? So then someone is set up with the clarity and resources they need to be successful.
Awesome. Can I actually flip the question around to you and ask how your process was, not necessarily on an onboarding point of view, but from an internal promotion point of view? Were there any like particular shifts that happened over the past few months? What was that process like for you? And yeah, do you have any advice for, I mean, not necessarily anyone in that particular, any leadership role that may be getting a promotion internally?
Yeah, for sure. I've always been a fan of do the job that you want, not the job that you are assigned to do. And so I actually led the CRO team for a year before my promotion. And it was almost like trial period is not the right word, but it was an opportunity for me to get to know that team, get to know that practice a bit more, understand is there value I can ultimately add to this team in terms of revamping their new business story or their day-to-day strategy or process. And we did all of that, and we did all of that successfully. And then at that point, after a year of doing that, it became a pretty easy conversation with my manager of, hey, we should formalize this in some way, and ultimately integrate these teams better. There's a better story here around site experience. As opposed to just focusing on SEO or just focusing on CRO, we can blend these products together for a much more compelling story of let's improve site experience. So my advice would be do the job you want. Obviously, make sure it's fair enough for you. I'm not saying like overextend yourself or do a job for free, but make sure that your intentions are clear and you feel really good about that next career step.
Awesome. I love that. Yeah, create the job for you. I have a few questions that Josh wanted to put in from our behalf as well, from Darius's departure. But one of the questions was you were previously on a recent interview that we checked out, and you spoke on the Whiteboard Friday presentation where you outlined the SOAR framework, which is SOAR framework. So we wanted to ask your insight on a little bit about that, and if you could break it down for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I developed the SOAR framework so you could future-proof your career and your team in an AI world. So SOAR stands for S is streamlining the basics, O is orchestrating your team, A is automating monotony, and R is repositioning your focus. So starting with S, when you streamline the basics, it's being able to use technology, reporting, data in a way that doesn't distract you from actually executing work. I can't tell you how many agencies I hear spend 5 plus, 10 plus, 20 plus hours per month working on just reporting, just like literally taking data from a spreadsheet, putting it into some other format. And to me, that is wasted time. There is a much better way to streamline those basics. But even outlining things like communication cadences with your stakeholders and identifying who is responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed on each and every activity. Those are all things that you can and should streamline. And then we get to the point of orchestrating our team. So as SEOs, it's a team sport. We're working with developers, with content managers, brand managers, etc. And it's really important that everyone understands what your vision is, what your role is, and what you can ultimately bring to the table. So by creating something like an SEO playbook that outlines, here are my roles and responsibilities, here's what your team works on, here's how we can work together, you can really orchestrate the teams better. So you can improve the timeline to impact, if you will, on the SEO work that you are ultimately delivering. And then we get to number 3, which is really where technology comes in, and that is automating monotony. So we live in a world where generative AI can ultimately do quite a bit of things that a decade ago, early in my career, I had to do manually. So things like data analysis or any type of metadata creation, title tags, meta descriptions. Like generative AI can get you 80% of the way there on any of these tasks. And these are tasks that used to take me personally, 40 to 100 hours per month to do. So finding what are those tasks that you do over and over again every month that you spend way too much time on, finding ways to automate them, and using that through tools that exist out there. And then last but not least, when you do all 3 of those things, you are ultimately going to have more time at your disposal. You're going to have more breathing room to reposition your focus and ultimately go after higher impact opportunities for the business and be able to show a heavier business impact rather than just focusing on one blog article at a time. You're focusing on, hey, how do we spin up an entire new section for this new product we're launching? How do we totally revamp our DPR strategy, right? So that's what this SOAR framework is really meant to do, is allow you to reposition your focus so you can grow your career, you can grow your team, and show a higher business impact than you would without being able to use this type of framework.
Awesome. I love that. And were there any particular, as you mentioned in explaining this, having AI take over almost 40 to 100 hours per month, were there any particular mindset shifts that you experienced over the past year or two that you had to sort of come to terms with as a leader, and especially in terms of helping motivate and lead your team to stay ahead of the game with AI? Were there any things like that you experienced, and what in particular were those?
Yeah, absolutely. I think number 1 is you need to create a healthy amount of skepticism when working with any of these tools. They will confidently tell you the wrong answer. And if you don't have that level of skepticism to say, hey, this number doesn't seem right, or this data feels off, like it doesn't pass the gut check, then you're going to end up presenting bad information. And it's like that even with like AIO outputs or chat, and my fear is that people will become over reliant on this technology that can just be plain wrong sometimes. So with that, we've had to implement and coach the team on having better QA process, making sure someone else is always reviewing your work. On certain types of initiatives, if it's like a big QBR or a big strategic presentation, making sure that leaders are always presenting that work. Because someone who's been in the industry kind of has a historical norm of what is within the realm of reason that someone who's newer to the industry just doesn't have that historical context. So I think there's a lot of good that can come from using technology and AI in particular, but it's also important to really emphasize the human component as someone integrates that into their workflows.
I love that a lot. And we're seeing a lot more of that as time evolves as well. So we wanted to kind of follow up this question with, have you been experiencing, from a team's point of view, have you experienced any of your SEOs struggling when adapting to the AI era, and how have you sort of helped manage the team, I guess, stay accountable and on top of it in that sense?
It has been a struggle. I think in the early days, especially, there was this shock factor of like, am I still gonna have a job?
Yeah.
And there was very much this resistance of, I don't want to use technology that will replace me, or replace certain tasks that I'm doing, right? And it definitely took a lot of coaching and vision for the team for them to ultimately feel comfortable integrating these types of tasks. Just to put it into perspective, though, early in my career, like Google Analytics didn't exist. Like you had to utilize other analytics tools that were horrible, and find a way to like integrate all of that data, story tell all of that data, comb through all of that data. And of course, as Google Analytics came out and became better and better and better, you could just rely on that. So this is par for the course in this industry that is always changing. Technology is getting better, and tasks are ephemeral, whereas your value is not ephemeral unless you throw in the towel and say, yeah, that's all the value I can have. So in my mind, it's one of those things of really building the team's confidence. And I always tell my team, confidence is not in what you know, it's in your ability to learn. And I think if you have that type of mindset in this AI world, you become a lot less fearful and a lot less scared of utilizing this technology to provide value to you in other ways. So you can go and learn new things, and you can go and apply that learning in very different ways.
Awesome. Moving on to communication, because you mentioned something quite interesting when you started off, which is now that you are managing the team with 90 plus SEOs and CROs, if that's correct.
80, yeah.
80.
Yeah.
Um, it's still a lot. So I would like to ask how that's going, but also, do you have any communication tips to leaders? Naturally, I mean, 80 plus is quite a large number and a good number to maintain um, alignment across the board. And yeah, I'd love to know how are you managing that, and have you experienced any bottlenecks when managing a team like that? And yeah, do you have any advice?
Yeah. My advice would be align on communication cadences for your team, set very clear visions and expectations of what you want on every client account, what you want for the team, what you want for every role. And then where most people fail is make sure that there are incentive and accountability levers along the way. And then from there, trust your team. We have a great team of SEO leaders. We have a great team of SEO managers. And if I was in every nitty gritty detail of what's happening on everyone's day and everyone's account, I would drive myself insane. And truly, I don't know if there are enough hours in the day for me to be that
Yeah.
involved.
Yeah.
So I really have to trust my team and build a culture to where when they have questions, when they are confused on the vision, they feel comfortable enough bringing that to me and asking those questions. So yeah, that would be my advice for if anyone is ever as fortunate to lead a team of this size.
Awesome. And on the topic of mentorship as well, I wanted to touch on that as well, because you do have some experience in that as well. Um, were there any particular mentors that stood out for you when you were progressing in your career as well, and what sort of qualities stood out from them to you?
Ooh, I love this question. And to be honest, I kind of get poked fun at a lot by my colleagues when I say I have mentors that come from very, very diverse backgrounds. So first and foremost, I want to say like your boss should be your biggest mentor, your biggest advocate. If you are at a place to where your boss is not being clear with you on how you progress, what you need to achieve to progress, etc., or willing to stick up for you in ways that you feel proud of, you should get out of there. Like your boss should be your ultimate mentor. You're going to spend more time with them than anyone else. But outside of that, you can and you should absolutely pursue mentors even outside of your industry. So one of my mentors has her PhD in neuroscience. She wrote Venture Capital for Dummies. She is just an incredible human, and I learned so much from her because she has such a unique and different perspective on how people work and how you can communicate better that like actually triggers your brain to respond in a positive way. That whenever I feel stuck, I'm able to go to her and get a perspective that is wildly different than anyone in the digital marketing industry. So yeah, my biggest piece of advice here is go and find mentors that aren't just in your industry or haven't just done the same rodeo that you're trying to do. But when you find mentors outside of that, you can actually build your own rodeo and do things in a different way. And that is ultimately going to provide so much more value for your career than doing stuff the same way your mentor in the industry did before you. Even if they were successful, I think innovation is always going to be rewarded in some way as long as you stick with it.
Awesome. And I think building off of that, I really love that. I wanted to ask, do you have any tips to SEOs that are stepping into leadership for the first time and are having to be put into that spot where they are now mentoring the team below them? Do you have any advice to them?
Yeah, I would say don't overextend yourself. I think a lot of times when you're new to mentorship, you want to provide the world to people you're mentoring, and which is, you know, a very endearing quality. But on the flip side of that, you want to make sure that that you're not overextending what you're able to provide. And I say this especially for all the empaths out there, because it can be really draining if you become the mentor on that person's personal life, on that person's professional life, on that person's relationship life, right? So don't be afraid to set boundaries on what that relationship is and the value that you're ultimately able to provide as a mentor. And then last but not least, kind of related, is don't be scared to say you don't know. You're going to be asked questions about experiences that you've never had before. And it is okay for you as a mentor to say, I've never had that experience. Here are my thoughts on it, but you should go talk with someone who has had that experience. That way you're not leading someone astray or being overly confident in something that you are unfamiliar with.
I love that. I love that there's that sort of like setting healthy boundaries as a leader as well. That's awesome. To, I guess, sort of flip the question on its side and go from communicating to your team, I also wanted to ask, do you have any tips for team leads that need to move into client-facing spaces? You know, I imagine Brainlabs has some really awesome clients, so who better to ask than you?
Yeah, I think most people try to keep client relationships too transactional. You know, in the realm of you pay me money, I provide you a service, that's it. And what I've learned is when you can develop a really close relationship with that person to where you're asking, hey, what are you doing this weekend? Or you learned that their kid was out sick and you're able to ask a week later, hey, how is your child doing? You know, that those relationships make your day-to-day life so much easier because you can get to yes a lot easier. It becomes a lot more of a collaborative approach as opposed to a transactional approach. And oddly enough, there's research to back this up. Doctors who are liked and just have better personalities, lawyers and teachers who are more personable are all less likely to be sued by huge percentage points. So just be likable and be personable, build that relationship, and you're less likely to be sued, and and you're more likely to ultimately get to yes on whatever initiative you are proposing.
I love that. It's a very strong argument. I can't argue with that. To wrap it up, I always leave this question for last, but I have to ask you before we end things here. We are still moving into Q2 at the moment, and AI has been flinging the SEO industry as well as many other industries around. And it's been fun and a wild ride. So I'd love to ask you for your advice / foresight for the rest of SEO and beyond. Do you have any predictions for where the industry is going? Any patterns that you're noticing? Yeah, any last tips?
Yeah.
So many.
Just number one, clicks are going to go down. And that doesn't mean that Google is less valuable than it used to be. That doesn't mean that SEO is less valuable than it used to be. What it means is you need to make sure that you are communicating what the new KPIs are that ultimately yield success. We know that when a brand shows up in an AI overview or on an AI search engine or anywhere on the internet in front of a consumer, that has some level of impact for that consumer's decision, and that is still beneficial. And I think for the last 2 decades, we've fallen into this false hope that having these types of metrics that appear in Google Analytics and so on and so forth ultimately give us a false sense of security and a false sense of, oh, if I invest more in these channels, it'll yield better results. And the reality is marketing has always been a much more mixed bag, and human psychology has always been a much more mixed bag in terms of what ultimately drives that person to purchase. So really understanding what the new KPIs are, I think, is going to be crucial. And then last but not least, adapting and adapting your own process and adopting new technology as new tools come out will allow you to really automate that monotony so you can reposition your focus. Don't be scared of it. This is going to be the future. And I think someone who utilizes AI in their workflows is going to be much stronger than someone who doesn't. So it's really important that we're not scared of it, but we're mindful of the impact that it does have on the metrics that we've become so accustomed to for the last 2 decades. But it doesn't make our work any less valuable.
Awesome. I love that. Travis, that wraps up our half an hour. Thank you so much for coming on. And yeah, for anyone that is listening in, please give Travis a follow. And yeah, really enjoyed this webinar with you. So I hope you have a fantastic Friday further, and we'll chat soon.
Thank you.